I call the meeting to order. Okay, committee members. The clerk has advised me that we do have a quorum, and I call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 37 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June the 23rd, 2022, but today at this session we'll all be here in the committee room. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. For those participating virtually, please use the raised hand icon function. Before speaking, click the microphone icon to activate your own mic. For those participating in the room, it will be controlled in the room by the proceedings and verification officer. I will manage the speaking order. You may speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available, and I would ask members to speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of the translators for the interpretation services. If at any time we lose translation, please get my attention. I will suspend until it's corrected. I would like to remind all participants that screenshots or photos are not allowed of the room. Again, should any technical issues arise, please get my attention and I will suspend while they are clarified. Pursuant to order of reference, Wednesday, June the 15th, 2022, the committee will commence its study of Bill C-215, an act to amend the Employment Insurance Act, illness, injury, or quarantine. I would like to inform all members that the witnesses appearing virtually today have completed the technical test and will be able to proceed. I would like to now at this time welcome the witness to begin the discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks, beginning in the first with our colleague, Monsieur Gourde, MP for Lévis-le-Bottignies, as well as we have two witnesses in the first hour, as an individual, Louis Sans-Fasson. Welcome, gentlemen, and I will now move to welcome Mr. Gourde to begin his 5-minute opening remarks. Mr. Gourde, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the members of the committee. Thank you for being here today for a study that is extremely important. Today, the committee will become the Committee of Hope, the hope for 151,000 Canadians who each and every year need more than 15 weeks of EI sickness benefits. This is the goal and the spirit of the bill that I've tabled. It is to bring this from 15 to 52 weeks. The number of sick week benefits available in case of prolonged illness, cancer, serious sickness, and this can make a huge difference in the life of these people. I personally know what this can mean to have help. In 1993, my wife had cancer, and it lasted a year. From the diagnosis and then to through all the treatments and then into remission. For her to become healthy, it took 1 year, from January 2013 to the end of December 2013. So I can tell you that all those who experience difficult times, and it makes a huge difference, because when we're fighting for our life, for our health, we need every single thing that we can to keep focused, to not lose hope. And too many Canadians lose a battle because they have financial problems on top of this. They're no longer able to work, and after 15 weeks, they have no more EI benefits, and there are too many Canadians that are not able to pay for private insurance. As an MP, I'm asking you to think about this. Don't hide behind a recommendation. The House of Commons voted at second reading for this bill. So it's really important here today to raise awareness and to understand that the decision that will be made in the days to come on my bill will have an impact on the lives, a direct impact on the lives of 151,000 Canadians. And this also has an impact on the lives of the spouses, the children, the parents, the friends. We all know people in our lives who have had or who will have very serious health issues. And this is a message of hope that Canada and that the government of Canada can support this. When we go over a year and we have disability, there are different benefits, but between 15 and 52 weeks, there is a gap in Canada. There's nothing to support Canadians. It is our duty as parliamentarians. Don't hide from this, please. Don't hide behind procedure, perhaps to avoid abuse, but this bill is not abuse of any kind. It's a need. It's a necessity. And I implore you to think about it, and I'm going to stop there. Thank you. Sans façon. Mr. Sans façon? I'm going to speak in French. Good morning, or good afternoon, and thank you for welcoming me. And I'd like to thank Ms. Louise Chabot for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm going to read a statement. I know I have 5 minutes, but I'll tell you. It is with great emotion that I'll try to deliver my testimony in order to honor the memory of my daughter, Emily. But the promise I made to her in 2018, Emily was working as a bookkeeper for a small construction company. She was diagnosed with colorectal cancer at stage 3. She was the mother of a 3-year-old daughter, and she was told that chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation treatments would be required to survive, and that this would certainly last several months. Having never been confronted with this situation, she did not know the duration of the insurance benefits to which she would be entitled. The answer was 15 weeks. This 15 weeks had existed since 1971. At 29 years of age, she thought that by getting directly involved, she could help change the law. Between those 62 chemo sessions, she came here to Ottawa to educate decision-makers, yourselves, as to improve the quality of life for sick workers. I accompanied her throughout. She even met personally with Prime Minister Trudeau on December 17, 2019, almost 3 years ago. So she had a lot of hope. Bill C-265 was named at Émilie Sans Façon. It was introduced by the Bloc Québécois MP Claude de Bellefeuille, who always accompanied Émilie. The bill did not receive royal assent. Elections were called, and the bill 265 died on the order paper. And my wife and my daughter also passed away. Emily passed away on November the 5th, 2020, without having seen any improvement. The process of a young citizen who never asked to be sick was strewn with medical and financial challenges. Emily was disappointed and lost on both fronts. On December 15th, Mr. Jacques Gourde, Conservative MP for Lévis-Locbinière, introduced Bill 216. This is the 8th bill on the same subject. We hope that the benefits will increase to 50 or 52 weeks. Some MPs are sometimes voting for, sometimes voting against. Mr. Trudeau in February 2012 voted for, and this motivated Emily. Citizens choose their representatives yourselves, and each MP has the privilege of intervening and participating in the exercise of democracy. Personally, in Quebec, tens of thousands of people will have to take time off work due to illness. Some will have cancer and will have to follow a protocol that goes well beyond 15 weeks. A report by the PBO indicates that the majority of EI sickness benefit recipients are off work for an average of 41 weeks. Mrs. Kelly Masati, VP, Public Advocacy of the Canadian Cancer Society, indicates that the average length of treatment for breast and colon cancer is 26 to 37 weeks, the period of convalescence adding to the work absence. You will all have understood that some people do not make it. The disease has an impact on the daily life of the sick person, but also on their family, their friends, their children. The perverse effect of the 15 weeks and even the 26 weeks leads quietly but surely to poverty. As an MP and minister, such as myself, you will not have to worry the day after a diagnosis. You're not part of the workers of the tertiary zone, the marginalized people, those who do not benefit from group or mutual insurance. I had bone cancer, and I'm protected through insurance. For you who will have to participate in the decision, tell yourself that this situation could apply to a member of your family, a friend, a neighbor. In short, this absurdity is real, it's insidious, and it affects almost the morale even worse than the disease itself. This is to the detriment of community and solidarity. It is unjustified that in Canada, sick working citizens have to resort to GoFundMe accounts, that they're forced to organize benefit dinners or other activities to fund their situation, to fund for transport to hospitals, for medication. Mrs. Qualtrough stated in the House of Commons on May 28, 2021, that Canadians expect and deserve to have an EI program that is flexible and responsive to their needs. I agree with her. 26 weeks does not correspond to the reality of citizens. Of course, Mr. Chair, you will not see sick, unemployed people participating in a demonstration, walking in the streets, protesting. They're too busy surviving medically and especially financially. I know that we had the pandemic and now inflation. So what will this same worker do in the face of inflation? The effect of the pandemic causes delays for surgeries, but also in diagnoses and the management of patients. From the outset, this wastes precious weeks that should be devoted to recovery and return to work. They will pay a high price. You will all agree that a healthy environment promotes healing. The stress of the unknown when faced with illness, multiplied by the financial reality and challenge of feeding oneself, paying bills, or caring for one's family, becomes a source of mental exhaustion and certainly does not support a return to work. Sooner or later, the sick worker, having exhausted the weeks of benefits, will start to have to sell assets, deplete all savings to qualify and apply for Social Security. This is a provincial responsibility. In closing, Minister Qualtrough also said we need to modernize the law, and I agree with her. But let's not do things halfway. 52 divided by 2, well, that's close to 26. Let me quote Marie-Hélène Dubé, whom I congratulate for her determination and courage. She said, "The objective is that workers can heal in dignity and respect." One day, you will all have to stand up in the House to represent thousands of people who elected you. You all have workers in your ridings who are living through the same situation as Emily. As a citizen, I expect each of you to vote with your heart and your sense of responsibility. I ask you to remember your commitment and your privilege to make a difference for those who do not have a voice. In memory of Emily, I thank you for listening to me. Thank you, Mr. Sans-Façon.
Floor to questions, beginning with Madame Kuzi with 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sans-Façon. Thank you for being here today. And Mr. Gould, thank you for being here. Mr. Sans-Façon, my most sincere condolences with regarding to the passing of your daughter. Mr. Gould, why do you think that 52 weeks is... Why do you think that... Why have you suggested this bill? I tabled this bill because we see that 15 weeks is not enough. is not enough given the reality of a person who is suffering through a long-term illness or cancer. In the case of Mr. Sanfaçon's daughter, she was sick for a year. Personally, when my wife was sick, it lasted a year. Cancer treatments take a long time. Recovery is long. And people are not able to work while they're receiving chemotherapy treatments, radiotherapy treatments. I saw my wife tremble for hours at a time after treatments. It's extremely difficult, and it takes a lot of support. Unfortunately, when people have financial problems, in addition to health problems, it just aggravates the situation. We need all types of assistance: money, volunteer, friends, family members, brothers, sisters. We need all this help. And this allows someone to hold on to life. And so Canada seems to have a lot of progress to be made. Thank you, and also thank you for having tabled this bill. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, to have 52 weeks will cost $8 billion over 5 years. Why do you think this is worth it? Well, it's worth it. It also would be worth to have him testify in order to explain in further detail the accounts and the cost, because we see that we're going from 15 to 52 weeks. So it's as if the maximum of all people who would have the need, well, it's a maximum amount. It's all the people who would go over the 15 weeks. You're calculating as if they'll all are being required to have 52 weeks, but it seems, if I understood correctly, on the average it's 41 weeks. So if it's the price of a coffee a month for Canadians, about $2.30, and for the employer about $3.30 a month, it's impossible to find the equivalent in private insurance at the same price. To have the equivalent of the same protection, it would cost 10 or 20 times more. And so given that 20 million Canadians that are paying, it's a group insurance, a huge group insurance at a very, very affordable price. Thank you.
Exemple où ce n'est pas assez de temps, par exemple.
You give the example that where about chemotherapy. Perhaps you can give other example where 15 weeks is not enough. Or you can also tell us, why does the government think that 26 weeks is enough? And why do you understand that we need 52 weeks? Well, for me, it's difficult to talk on behalf of the government. Some people here have inspired us. But what is significant is we should not forget that 52 weeks is the possibility to be completely healed. 26 weeks will help people until 26 weeks. Yes, I agree with you. But if the person needs 15 more weeks, and if she doesn't have savings or she doesn't have a family to help, what does she do? She will receive, notice that her rent is not paid, that she can't make her mortgage payment. Well, I mean, when you're really in bad sick, it's not easy. And these benefits are just 55% of the amount. So if you have $1,000 a week and you receive only $500 after tax, and when you're sick, it's $20,000 to $25,000 more per year in expenses. So you don't have your full salary, and then it costs you more, and you don't have time to work, and you don't have the energy to work. So it's certainly necessary to help out. Mr. Sanfaçon, perhaps you can say how 52 weeks could help families and people who need more time in order to manage the situation. Perhaps, what do you have to say today? Well, as I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of unknown when you're sick. You don't know when the end of your sickness will be. In the best time, well, there is a possibility of healing. Well, this 50 or 52 weeks is the maximum. When people are sick, there is medical certificate. You don't go for 52 weeks. You go and fight for your life, and you have people helping them out. And I did this for my daughter, but I say I was there, but there was my wife also. There were other people, friends. This affects their life because they love this person, but also in the daily life, you want to organize transportation. You want that these people get healed and go back to work. And this is something that gives you a certain value in your life. So we all want this. We're talking about cancer, and I'm thinking of my daughter, Emily. But if you have like 40 weeks or 42 weeks, I mean, the person needs to know in their mind that she, a peace of mind. So sure, we can talk about 52 weeks, but it's the maximum. So perhaps the idea was done as if everybody would ask for 52 weeks. But I think we need to explain the situation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for our witnesses who were here today, or are here today, rather.
Who's Mayor Checa? For 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Mr. Sanfasson, for, again, returning to the HUMA committee, for testifying once again and bringing the story of Emily to this committee and to our work. As the anniversary of Emily's passing approaches, I want you to know that we continue to be inspired by her courage and inspired by her tremendous determination to improve the lives of other Canadians in this country. And at the same time, I also want to thank you for your tremendous determination, for your courage, and for your continued advocacy as well here today. And I want you to know that your testimony is important. Your words are important. They matter a great deal to us. And I want you to know that they are being heard. You've been speaking extensively with Canadians about the need to reform the EI program and specifically to extend sickness benefits. And I just wanted to ask whether it's from your experience or from the stories that you've heard from other Canadians and conversations that you had, what sort of stands out for you from some of those stories that you've heard? What conclusions would you say that you've drawn, and maybe perhaps even what has surprised you from the conversations, extensive conversations that you've had with Canadians?
Merci pour votre question. Merci pour votre commentaire. Merci pour le.
Thank you for the question and the comments, and thank you for remembering my daughter. What I can keep from all this is that people heal better when they have hope and when they have help from other people, especially when they're not have to deal with the unknown, financial unknown, etc. Most people I've seen in television and radio, people always say that they almost went bankrupt, that they were at the end of the rope financially, and they said that it doesn't help to heal. And most of them, even though I didn't meet too many of those, I heard them more than I heard about them more. But I think it gives us the obligation to react in the right way, and as I was saying, not to do halfway. I hope that the party in power will understand the situation. I think it's important, I repeat, because behind the mask there are real people.
Sir, and I thank you for it. You mentioned the unknown or the uncertainty that Canadians that are sick and that are in that position they feel, and often there is this stressful gap that they experience between the times when they exhaust their EI benefits or other supports and when they are able to return to work. And we know that period is extremely stressful, and it impacts their health, impacts their families. And I just wanted, knowing that Emily also experienced this tremendous stress after exhausting her benefits, can you tell us a little bit about how Canadians feel that gap? How do they feel that gap? What impact does it have on their lives?
Bien,
Well, it's not only the 15. You start to be stressed when you meet your doctor or your physician, and your physician tells you that your healing will go through 40 weeks of treatment. Well, you already have some stress there. You would like for it to go quickly, but then you have 12 weeks, and then you are at the 13 weeks, and you have, you have a kind of dinners, spaghetti dinners, etc. It's a lot of love, but still, there should be some help. You should have people bringing you to the hospital, transporting you there, to help this person in their daily life with their children. But 15 weeks, it's like a psychological barrier. When you are reaching the 15th week, well, it's really difficult. Well, Emily was lucky to have people with a little bit of money around her, but it's not the case of everybody. And the third-class citizen, it's people with very little money. But when you're young, you don't think of putting money aside for when you will be sick. The first thing you would like to do is to buy a house, etc. But one day, you get this information, you get this diagnostic. And for me, it's the same. I have cancer as well, and Emily was believed in medicine, but in her case, it didn't work. And then, of course, the pandemic didn't help because of the virus, etc. But all this is an incredible stress. And if you would not have to think about the financial part, if it was under control, because it's not the money that you'll give just any way. It will be controlled. It will be to help people specifically. And I think people are ready to give even a little bit more money to pay for this benefit. Perhaps it's the price to pay to have this peace of mind. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Good and Mr. Sanfasson, for your testimonies. It's always troubling when you look at the reality of these people, what they have to go through with an incurable disease, or we hope it to be curable, but it stops your life, and we hope to have the possibility to support these people. Mr. Good, you talked about our committee as being a committee of hope. I would like for you to give a bit more detail, because your bill, I don't remember the number, I think it's the 12th one after 11 since 2009. 4 from NPD, 6 from Bloc Québécois, 1 from the Liberals, Denis Coderre, who also was advocating 52 weeks. And this one is 255. I think the bill, Émilie Sans-Passon, was voted unanimously, but it died on the order paper, unfortunately. So, Mr. Good, what do you think? What makes you think that this time will be the right one? Well, when I said the Committee of Hope for the HUMA Committee, because the bill started its study, the committee started the study in the beginning of the legislature, so we could have the time, because when we have bills, it's selected, but sometimes you don't have the time to go very far. And when there's another election, then everything dies on the order paper. So unfortunately, every other time it's died on the order paper. But this time, I really tabled it in December because I had the luck to be drawn by luck in the first 30 members who could present a bill or table a bill. So I wanted to take all the luck possible to make sure it would not die on the order paper. And I also have the hope, and it's the second hope, that they will go all the way to the Royal Assent. I think they should think about it. They should talk about it in their caucus, because they are talking about changing the Employment Insurance Law Act. Sorry, but we should be careful. Mr. Saint-Fasson, I would commend you for everything you do for people with immunosuppression, and also for the fight you did for Emily. And you're right, she did. She fought twice, once for her life and once for her health, but also she fought for others. The government said 26 weeks, and it should have been put into place in July, but it's not done. Would you agree to say that because we are trying to change the Unemployment Insurance Act, perhaps it would be the time to give this chance to everybody, so that it's not halfway, but we could change it from 15 to 52? Well, obviously, I agree with what you said, and I agree with this will. That's impressive to go further, to go ahead, and to convince all the members. A member is someone who represents the citizens of his or her riding, and in your riding there are people ill. And there's a small percentage of people who will need to go all the way up to 52 weeks. And you need to keep this in mind. 26 weeks, it's as if you were saying, we'll play a match of hockey, but we'll start in the middle. Nobody will win, but there will be losers. So you need to make sure you finish the match. And I ask you to engage, to think about this. And tomorrow you'll meet people who are sick in your riding. And it's really difficult to explain to them that you can listen to them and you can hear them, because it's a whole difference. Listening to people and act are two different things.
In continuity with the work done by Marie-Hélène, I believe that many things were done, but there's one last step that needs to be done, and the last step is not 26 weeks, but rather 52. Mr. Saint-Fasson. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened since 1971. So now, in 2022, all scientific studies show us. We could talk about the Canadian Cancer Society, multiple sclerosis. Isn't it high time? Is the moment not come now for us to act now in order to ensure that benefits will last 1 year? Yes, it is time.
Monsieur Sans Façon can catch that in another question. We're well over. Madame Zerillo for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And nice to see you, and thank you for sharing your story of your daughter, Monsieur Sans Façon. I guess we've talked a lot today about women and how this could disproportionately be affecting women, whether it's single mothers or the fact that there is a wage gap in this country that doesn't allow women to save for things like this. And I also know, too, that it's actually harder for women to get private insurance for because of the rates of breast cancer in this country and those sort of things. And I know last week we were talking about ovarian cancer, again, a fatal disease that involves a lot of intervention and a lot of expenses that come along with illness. So I guess I did want to ask Monsieur Sans Façon just around that idea of, almost like public insurance for something that you cannot plan for or think that would come, especially at a young age. Are there demographics that are disproportionately affected by relying so much on having private insurance for anything past those 26 weeks, which we don't even have yet?
Votre question est...
Your question is very specific. I'm perhaps not the correct person to provide an answer. If you talk about groups of people who are more sick than others, I remember that I did see statistics to this effect, but I don't want to misquote anything from memory, because I did see Emily's age group. It's a category of people that is rarely sick with cancer, and oftentimes these people will survive. So as to the real statistic, I don't know. I can tell you about Emily, and I'm coming back with this idea that you're correct. It is insurance. There's an unknown factor, but we also have to agree that medicine is always improving. By improving medicine, we probably will also reduce the amount of time spent away from work. And this does have an impact as well. It has an impact on the return to work and hope of recovering with new medication, new approaches, new medical treatments for cancer.
Thank you very much. And I would ask Monsieur Gault, you spoke a little bit about the other areas involved, like it affects families and other caregivers that come, and it limits the amount of work that they can do. That's certainly what we heard from the ovarian cancer advocates. When we think about how many weeks of support that a person needs, in your experience or in the folks that you've spoken to, how does it affect the household when the income comes away from a family? Do you have any input on that, on how that affects the household in general?
L'impact sur une famille, ça touche.
The impact on the family, it has an impact on all the members of the family, the friends, everyone you know. When someone in your setting has cancer, you only think about that. You want to send them positive energy. You want to help the person. In our case, our family, the parents, brothers, sisters, neighbors, friends, everyone wanted to help us. But the battle is done by the patient. But when you feel that you have support, it's very helpful. When people offer to babysit your children over a longer term because you can't look after them. We had 3 children under 2 years of age at the time. They were in diapers when this happened. So my mother-in-law took care of the children over a long period of time, and this was very helpful. And people who are not able to have private insurance oftentimes are people who have a small salary. They earn $500 a week, so they only have a right to obtain $250. They don't receive this maximum of $600 a week, so I can tell you that the people who don't have the means of having complementary insurance are the people who are earning less, and they don't necessarily have full-time employment either. So sometimes all of these things are multiplying factors, and this makes a huge difference between having sickness benefits for half a year or 1 year. If you only earn $450 a week, and at the end of the week you have nothing left, how are you going to pay your grocery bill or your rent? And now you're sick, you can't work. Think of single mothers with children. They don't necessarily have a huge support network. They're very, very marginalized.
One quick question around mental health. So we know that this is a large conversation that's happening in communities right now. Do you see this this EI and the 50 to 52 weeks extend also to folks that are working through mental health challenges? I guess I'll ask Monsieur Gourde. Do you see this extending to that?
Si vous recevez un diagnostic,
If you have a diagnosis from a doctor, because one of the conditions to have the sickness benefit is a doctor's diagnosis that said that you're not able to work, regardless of the illness. For me, if you're not able to work, you're not able to work. So if you fill the conditions of eligibility for sickness benefits, that's fine.
Thank you, Madame Cirillo. We will now go to Madame Falk for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jacques, for bringing this bill forward. Also, too, I want to thank you, Mr. Saint-Fasson, for your continued advocacy, but also your willingness to come back to this committee, share vulnerability, and share your story and your daughter's story. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 11. And her illness went on for 20 years, off and on. And I was young, and my siblings were also very young. And I think my parents did a good job at hiding maybe the difficulty that they maybe were experiencing, such as financial hardship, going from a 2-parent working household to one, and one sick parent as well. So, Mr. Saint-Fasson, I'm just wondering, in your family's experience, what impact did if there was financial stress, have on the mental health of not only your daughter but those that were helping her as well?
Thank you for your question. Microphone. For Emily, the financial reality was crushing. We had to make family decisions to help her. And her group of friends organized many activities to try to fundraise. And when I say fundraise, this was minimal, what they were able to raise. And the impact on her friends, well, her friends were saying, oh my gosh, poor Emily, how is she going to make ends meet? She was renovating her house. She was all these things you want to do when you're 28, 29 years of age with a newborn. When Emily died, Jasmine was 3. So Emily had been battling cancer for 2 years. So this consumed everything, and her friends that came understood the situation, and everyone was trying to help. And it's not because you have a certain amount of money that the situation, the support is going to stop. No. For me, this is how I see it. And we talked about mental health. This also has a huge impact. All this stress, this situation. One's attitude allows for it, one's attitude means a lot, means so much. But if your attitude is
but hope. People do better with hope, and I think the government, every elected official at every level of government should be concerned when we're seeing headlines of people who, for example, can't afford food, can't afford to house themselves, who may not be sick, that now are wanting to end their life with MAID. I think we need to be cautious and take a moment to think about what we do here and what impacts that has. Mr. Gord, just quickly, I wanted to ask you, we had heard members from the government say that they've heard Mr. Saint-Vincent's story, and it basically hasn't gone on deaf ears. So, Mr. Gord, I'm just wondering, why do you think that this government has dragged their feet on implementing the 26 weeks, let alone 52 weeks?
C'est quand même difficile pour moi de répondre pour le...
It's very difficult for me to respond for the government. I would like for someone to have the courage to do that. But I would like to find someone who would have the courage to testify here against the bill. We might find 500 witnesses for, but unfortunately, at the end of the exercise, they might say, oh, well, we're not going to give royal assent because it's a private member's bill. And this was majority voted by the members of the House of Commons. And so it's almost an attack on democracy, because people say, oh, no, we're against it because there might be abuse, because it's not a government idea to increase to 52 weeks. And maybe they didn't have this in the election platform. This is partisan politics on the backs of people who are sick. We should never, never do that. We should never make funding cuts on the backs of people who are sick. And it is our duty as parliamentarians to make choices with what we do with the taxpayers' money. It is our duty to make good choices each and every day. Decisions are made in Ottawa. We spend over $1 billion a day here in Ottawa. We make decisions. And here we need about $1 billion a year that will be paid by Canadians. But we have to decide. We have to say yes or no to the 52 weeks. And I hope that we'll make the right decision at this committee, the Committee of Hope.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you to our presenters this afternoon. Mr. Saint-Vincent, thanks for coming back. I'm so sorry about the tragic loss of Emily. And MP Gord, thanks for bringing this forward. I appreciate your passion. Certainly in the House, I always look forward to seeing you speak. I'm also, just for the record, want to state that I'm really happy that I can see all parties around this table advocating for increased EI benefits. That is really very, very refreshing to see. And certainly we will be implementing the 26 weeks by the end of this year, which will help about 120,000 additional Canadians. All of us around this horseshoe have stories from our constituency offices. The calls we get, I talked to my team this afternoon. Jeanette Arsenault is the person that handles most of my constituency work. And I just asked her to share with me some of the calls she gets and some of the responses she has to give. And, you know, some of these people, Canadians, worked all their lives. And they get sick and receive 15 weeks of EI. And we've had some people basically be told that, well, you're going to have to go on social assistance, which is horrifying. We've had some people refuse treatments because they couldn't afford to go on EI sick leave. We also are entering an era of long COVID, where more and more Canadians are going to need more than 15 weeks. So, Mr. Gord, I'd like you to, in general, in your opinion, what are some of the greatest challenges that employees face regarding access to EI sickness benefits? What are some of the greatest challenges they face?
Ben, la difficulté, c'est quand tu es malade.
Well, what is difficult is when you're sick, you have a diagnosis from your physician saying that you can't work, and then you get EI benefits. But the spirit of my bill is that 1/3 of people, because there are 400,000 Canadians a year who ask for help for health insurance, and 51,000 more need more than 15 weeks. But there are still 31,000 Canadians for whom it's not enough. And the difference in cost between 26 weeks and for the 31,000 Canadians who, if the real assent was given to this bill, it would help us to help these 31,000 Canadians, and it wouldn't cost a lot. I would like for the parliamentary budget officer to do the math between the 26 weeks and 52 weeks. But the average is the 31,000 Canadian, but they would receive $300 or $500 per week. Is it worth putting these people in trouble because we argue between 26 and 52 weeks? Right now, the insurance companies are ready. We propose measures to change the programs, but the problem here, the issue here is the time. It took 50 years to move from 12 to 26. Well, we proposed 26, but the average is 41 weeks. And we would penalize 31,000 Canadian, and we have people calling in your writing saying, I don't have any money left. So is this worth it, closing this file for the next 50 years? I'll ask you to talk about it in your caucus.
Now, Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et demie.
You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we'll remember something here, too. The sickness benefit from the EI is the fund, the same fund. So they ask for a certain number of weeks for sickness benefit that are like employment insurance if you lost your job. It's the same thing. So the 50 or 52 weeks is really equitable. And you have to think that you need 600 hours of work to qualify. It's not everybody who gets these 600 weeks. So, Mr. Saint-Fasson, to conclude, I would like for you to remind us why it is necessary, according to you, to go beyond 26 weeks, why it's not enough to have 26 weeks. Why do we need 52 weeks? What is clear is in a case like Emily's case, knowing that the prognostic was really hard, but you have a hope of healing with the chemo, and that the protocol is 40 weeks. Your attitude facing your illness your anxiety will diminish, because the financial challenge, is becoming very stressful and is more important than the medical challenge. And both are working together, and it's too much. Those who have 40 weeks chemo are probably the more sick, but they want to go back to work. Those who are 16 weeks, we don't hear about these people who had 15 weeks but were healed after 17 weeks. I'm here to tell you that, nobody say, I would like to be sick. Where can I apply? It's not the case. One day you have this terrible news, and then you want to go back to work. So it will be better for you mentally and financially, and you can give a lot of activities to your children that you decided to cut off because you didn't have the money. So it's a family decision too. And I think everybody had this information. Everybody understands the situation. And I think the key is to let them have up to 50 weeks with a medical certificate from a recognized physician, from a real physician. And I don't think that physicians want to fraud the government. I think they do their job, and they want to help their patient to work and to return to the labor force. Madame Zorillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And MP Gould, this question is just for you in relation to, I'm going to go back to the gender question again, but we know that if a parent takes a maternity leave and ends up into a situation where they might get sick and do not have their accumulated weeks, do you agree or have any thoughts around some additional changes that should level the playing field in the way of gender equity for EI benefits? Do you support the idea that those maternity weeks should also be considered weeks worked for accumulated hours needed for this benefit? Yes, sorry. MP Gould, yes, please.
Je sais que le comité a fait un énorme.
I know that the committee worked a lot with the insurance, employment insurance. I hope that you took the time to talk about it in your report. I think that the ball is in the government's camp to present this modernization, and I hope that we'll get a nice surprises when we'll get the report.
Revisit to Mr. Sans-Façon. You mentioned today around your daughter and also for yourself, and you mentioned that maybe some of those financial challenges that come forward when this happens. I wonder if you could just share a little bit about how it affected the way you thought about other families that might be going through exactly the same thing. If you could just share a little bit about your journey in wanting to come in and make these testimonies and what drove you to want to make those testimonies.
En fait,
well, for me, it was a pilgrimage to go to Ottawa, because Emily came here, and in between her chemotherapy sessions, she came here, and she did it because she thought she could help, and I promised her to go as far as I can, and this is what I'm trying to do today. But I think the best way to do it would be to not be obliged to come back, to explain once again that 26-week or 33 or 35.5, or it's 52 weeks, up to 52 weeks. And for me, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Zorillo, and thank you, Monsieur Gourde and Monsieur Sans-Façon for your passionate testimony before committee. this afternoon. That concludes our first hour with witnesses. We'll suspend for a few minutes while we transition to the second hour as the witnesses are appearing virtually for the second hour. Again, merci beaucoup. We'll resume with the second panel. Committee members, welcome back. As you are aware, we're studying Bill C-215, an act to amend the Employment Insurance Act. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the two witnesses that are appearing virtually with us today, that you have the choice of speaking in the official language of your choice. And to get my attention, please use the raised hand icon at the bottom of your surface. For any reason, if we lose translation, please get my attention. And we'll suspend. While it is corrected. I would also remind you that please direct all questions through the chair. And I would like to begin by welcoming, as an individual, Marie-Hélène Dubé, and from the movement Action Chômage de Montréal, José Bazin. No? Is there a problem? That's my notes. No? Sorry, is there an issue? Can you not hear me, Madame?
Je m'excuse. Oui, je vous entends.
Yes, I do, but it's not the correct organization. Monsieur Bazin is at the head of the organization that you named. I didn't want people to be confused as to who was representing what organization.
Yes, that's it. Madame Dubé, you're presenting as an individual?
Oui.
Oui?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it Monsieur Bazin? Is appearing as a community organizer. So do we have Monsieur Bazin?
Oui, tout à fait. Je suis là.
Yes, I'm here. Mouvement Action Chômage de Montréal.
So we will, each presenter has 5 minutes. We will begin with Madame Dubé for 5 minutes, please.
Yes. Hello, and thank you for having welcomed me here for the third time. I am heading the 15 Weeks is Not Enough campaign since 2009. I faced cancer 3 times. I received 15 weeks of benefits. I started a petition with over 620 signatures. And so for many people there, I think it's important to remind of the context because many, many Canadians have asked for this change. I never would have believed 13 years later that I would still be living through this same nightmare again. I have had other complications, cancer-induced complications. I find myself without any income since August 28th because my 15 weeks are over. Everything that has been said previously applies to me. And so I'm very pleased to see that there's at least a new bill, but honestly, I find it extremely discouraging. I worked with all the parties over many years. Everyone always agrees when we have discussions such as these. But now there are all kinds of political games that have played, and I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I find it very unfortunate. And this bill has to be passed. I know that politics happens, but people are suffering. And when the Liberals, and they were supporting this change, when they arrived with this 26 weeks, well, this is when Louis and Emily joined my fight, and we did a lot together. And I met Justin Trudeau and Carla Qualtrough, and they had said very clearly that 26 weeks would not be applied that way, that they would review everything, amend it so that it would correspond to reality. I met Sean Fraser, Tyler Meredith, I met Mona Fortier. everyone said, no, it won't be 26 weeks. And then COVID happened. They went back to 26 weeks. And we don't even know why. Nothing has happened since 1971. If we're going to do things, let's do it properly. And many things were stated earlier, but if we put 26 weeks, a lot of people need more. 26 weeks and 50 weeks, this is a huge amount of difference. I have costs that have exploded for myself. It doesn't even make any sense. And honestly, I'm really not proud of being a Canadian when I see what's happening in other countries. I'm proud to be Canadian for many things, but with this, I find it really horrific. And the PBO said it. This is viable. It's possible. And we can pay for it. People agree. There's social approval for this. And 26 to 52 weeks makes a huge difference. And we talked about private insurance. Whether or not you have private insurance, a point that's important to mention is eligibility. Try to get private insurance if you've spent your childhood at Saint Justine, or if someone in your family has had a condition, you're not even eligible to anything. Another point, I'm a criminologist. I worked for over 10 years in criminology, and I was specialized in many things. When we talk about risk of abuse, well, I think a lot of good points were raised, but a lot of times people don't talk about the consequence. Maybe you think it would be expensive to amend this, but how much do you think it costs to keep the current bill in place? It costs a fortune to keep this. There are so many extra fees that wouldn't exist otherwise, and so it's really important. I'm sorry. I'm more emotional than I normally am today, and so I'm sorry. We also have to talk about intergenerational transmission of poverty, and this can go from 3 to 7 generations. So if someone has to sell their house, was found on social assistance, this will have a staggering impact on generations to come. And this can even, if we look at one family, you can have an impact on up to 1,000 families over the generations. So people find themselves on assistance programs for a lifetime. And why? They lose hope. And the second thing that's really important to mention is the lost revenue. All these people are no longer paying taxes. They're no longer paying into the system. And poverty leads to extra costs. In our federal government report in 2016, we saw that socioeconomic inequality in health imposes an annual direct economic burden of at least $6.2 billion. Well, of course, this is not only people who are receiving programs because of the 15-week issue, but these can be avoided. So I don't understand that in Canada, in 2022, after all of this work, do you have any idea of all the work that's been done with this campaign, all the people? Emily became a friend, Louise became a friend. How many people did I see? People who worked with me who are now dead. They've passed away. And it's inconceivable. It's just unbelievable. I never thought that it would lead to this. So please, can we set aside partisan politics? Can we set this aside and really, really look at this issue? Allow people to get better. Yes, we said that medical treatments are improving. People used to die. Now they recover. That's great. Now you can die in dignity. But do we have to recover in mediocrity, in poverty? Do we have to live through things like I'm experiencing right now? It's incredible. People are not able to heal. This is Canada in 2022. It took 14 bills, 50 years. Look at the number of meetings that I had to try to move the needle. So why? Why would we do this inadequately? 26 weeks. Do you think it will be possible afterwards to amend that? Of course not. No, it won't. It's going to be horrible. We talked about long COVID, and people have to be able to recover. People want to go back to work. 55% of the salary EI, this is poor. You're living with $7,000 or $10,000 for a year, and costs are going up. They're exploding. It really doesn't make any sense. So I would like for all these parameters to be taken into account, and I would like for us to agree. The Liberals, you worked with me. I mean, I worked with so many so many Liberals, so I don't understand what's happening, really. And to end, I think that we have to be coherent. Please, I know that there are a lot of new MPs around the table, but it's important to understand the scope of this campaign, the scope of it all, and please be coherent. Be coherent for the people who elected you, for people who are sick, for the 620,000 Canadians who signed paper copies of the petition. From one end of the country to the other. Allow people to heal, to recover, without all this extra stress that is totally inhumane. It's really inhumane.
And now, Monsieur Bazin, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, and good afternoon, and thank you to the members of the HUMA committee for allowing the Mouvement Action Chômage de Montréal to give its opinion on Bill C-215. I'd like to start by saying we're in favor of the proposed amendments. Nevertheless, I would divide my presentation into two parts. First of all, I'd like to draw the committee's attention to Section 12.6 of the EI Act regarding the general stacking of benefits. Unfortunately, the amendment to Section 12.3c of the Act could have no effect on some claimants, or not the wanted effect. I speak to some paragraphs of the EI Act that have an impact on salaried workers, but of course, the same thing is true for independent workers that pay for special EI benefits. So I'm coming back to paragraph 12.6. This prevents claimants who have received at least 1 week of regular benefits from accumulating more than 50 weeks of benefits combined. Thus, a claimant who has used regular EI benefits in the benefit period cannot receive 52 weeks of sickness benefits if they become ill. The reverse is also true. A claimant who has used 52 weeks of sick benefits and who subsequently loses the job will not be able to receive regular EI benefits, despite the fact that the illness is one of the reasons for extending the qualifying period provided for in subsection 8.2 of the Act. I would invite the members of the HUMA committee to consider this issue so that the amendment to paragraph 12.3c does not leave some sick claimants without replacement income. Obviously, the simplest way to deal with the perverse effect of Section 12.6 is to simply repeal Section 12.6 in its entirety. It is a one-sentence provision. Let's take this out of the EI Act, and we will solve the issue linked to general accumulation of different special benefits following or before regular benefits. By adding the amendment of 12.6 to the Act, members of the HUMA committee will be able to correct an eventual inequality between a part of people on EI who become sick. Secondly, while amending the Employment Insurance Act, I would invite the legislators to correct the inequity of the Act towards women who have received maternity, parental, or equivalent benefits from a provincial parental insurance plan. Mothers who have received maternity and parental benefits find themselves without replacement income if they lose their jobs without having worked enough hours to qualify for regular benefits. The federal government deemed the situation sufficiently concerning to allow these mothers to receive the CERB, or the Canadian Recovery Benefit, during the pandemic. On January 10th, the Social Security Tribunal rendered a decision stating that subsections 8.2, 8.5, 10.10, and 12.6 of the EI Act violate the right to equality protected by Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I would invite the members of the HUMA committee to amend Bill C-215 to correct this violation of the right to equality. The Parliament should amend 8.2 and 10.10 by adding to each of these sections a grounds for extension of the qualifying period and the benefit period. We already have 4 reasons why the reference period could be increased. With this amendment to 8.2 and 10.10, we're adding a 5th ground. This ground, C, for extension, could simply be written as follows. I'm using the feminine. She was receiving maternity or parental benefits or their equivalent from a provincial parental insurance plan. In addition, Parliament should repeal Section 8.5 as well as 12.6 already mentioned in the first part of my presentation. I know that the second part of my presentation is a little bit on the side, is not exactly what you're studying here with C-215, but I wanted to bring it up. On this note, I would like to thank the members of the HUMA committee for having listened to the opinion of the Mouvement Action Chômage de Montréal.
Merci, Monsieur Bazin.
Merci.
From committee members, beginning for 6 minutes with Madame Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for having me. This is my first time in HUMA, so thanks to everybody. Thank you to the witnesses and to the witnesses who testified earlier today. I think there's no denying how important this is. I think there's unanimous consent around how important this is. It's unfortunate that it hasn't been rolled out, that it's sort of taken this long time when, you know, there was promise that it would happen. Ms. Dubé, your testimony is powerful to hear that you were told it would happen and it hasn't. I guess from the pragmatic side of this is absolutely necessary. It reminds me very much of maternity leave. Quite frankly, it's very similar in being able to be with where you need to be and being covered for that and not having to worry about it. So I guess to go down to to get to the pragmatic side of things, my question, if I could go to Ms. Dubé, since you've dedicated so much of your life to this, how do you see funding this program? As you mentioned, it's costing more to keep it the way that it is. It needs to be updated. It hasn't been updated since 1971. Where do you see the government being able to account for the costs to cover this program?
En fait,
well, it has been shown before. If you look at the study from the parliamentary budget officer, it's obvious that we can pay this, and it's workers' premium. And the parliamentary budget officer did another part to confirm. He did it this year. So the Canadian Cancer Society did the study, and 90% of Canadians agree. So if somebody gets $800 clear, they pay $27 or something. Well, when you ask how are we going to pay, I mean, the money is already there. It's just a matter of political will. It's the need and the math have been shown, and honestly, I can't believe that I'm still here today, especially that everybody is agreeing to this. I cannot answer more than this, but we need to do the good things, the right things, and we know it's possible. So we need to do it.
To your point about the political will, and you've mentioned that you've spoken with the Prime Minister, you've spoken with the Minister of Immigration, you've spoken with all of the ministers. Have they given you a reason on what has been the holdup or why you're still here when, quite frankly, you shouldn't be?
Manifestement, je ne devrais pas.
Well, I shouldn't be here, that's for sure. Honestly, I don't have an answer. I can't get a clear answer to this. I'm told we need to study more, or we'll do that gradually. Honestly, I think when they're changing chair and they're changing ideas. When I participated to all this, I think it's very sad. We are losing time every day. People are losing their house. You have families that will be impacted for the rest of their lives because they had a few weeks missing. I don't have an answer for you because nobody has an answer that makes any sense. We are just losing time and we are hiding behind administration, between research behind something or other. And then there are elections and there's always something. So now it died at the order paper. Well, we don't have luck. And we're caught in all this. So this bill is really well placed this time. So I don't have an answer because I never receive a clear and satisfying answer. There's never that. So it's a matter of will. Do we want in Canada that people are healing themselves in the street, that they find themselves with social welfare? I gave 400 interviews, and I did an article with somebody who had lost absolutely everything, and she was living in a camping ground with her son. And I talked with Patrick Lagacé, and he was absolutely shocked. But is this the Canada we want? Can we open our eyes and see that it doesn't work? It's not possible for people who work all their lives and who want to work, who want to go back to work. And it has also impact on their mental health. I mean, people are depressed. People have a lot of complication that they would not need to do, and they do it because of stress. Because you have poverty, you have problems with your kids, and you transmit this problem to your kids. There is never a reason good enough, and we are afraid that there is abuse, as if people could decide in advance of the duration of their benefits. I mean, when you have 55% of your salary, it's poverty. I mean, you should stop with all this. We should do the right thing. I can't believe that I'm still here. When I started here, I was 38, and I'm 51, and I'm here today. And I do it for others, and I had to go through it again. I mean, you have a lot of testimonies in your writings, but I receive a lot of testimonies. And I thought, well, I will stop doing it because nobody listens to me. I'm really discouraged sometimes, and I'm do that voluntarily. And I never stopped because I had all kinds of testimonies of people who lose everything. They are now living in the street. I'm not here with you today because of my health situation, and I can't believe it that I won't see this change. I can't believe that people will get 26 weeks when they know. I mean,
Madame Martinez-Ferrara pour 6 minutes.
Oui, merci. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for the testimony we heard from Madame Dubé. It's the first time I listened to it, and I wished you had the health to come and be in person here, and at least we can see you remotely. I would like to give you the floor to talk about transgenerational poverty, because in my family I had people who were also sick, and I would like for you to talk about the impact on yourself, but on the family and on location of people, natural care people, and how do people behave around you. So I would like to give you the floor to talk about the consequences of this on your family and how this transfer of poverty is actually taking place. Well, this is a very difficult impact. My children are older, but when they were younger, it's their life that's completely changed. They couldn't do any activities. it's the minimum life. You know, we had to buy second-hand clothes. I couldn't take care of them all the time, and I think you need to protect your children anyway. All parents do that, and the act was modified for if somebody has his child has leukemia, then they can take 35 weeks. But if you have leukemia and you have children, well, then you have 15 weeks with people to care of. So the consequences and the impact is very strong. But my luck was that I had a house that will remortgage forever, remortgage and remortgage and remortgage. I'll never have a retirement. I'll never be able to take advantage of this. And this has a very strong impact on my children. I would like to give them a little bit of something or other, but I won't be able to. It's totally impossible. So the family, for sure. I had help, for sure. But, you know, at the time, there was no GoFundMe when I was sick. So it was just colleagues at work. And this is really strong. And the fact that you need to be away because you're away from your work, it isolates you. And it really affects you. The fact that you're stressed out, you want to make sure the children and the family doesn't see that too much because you don't want to put your problems on people's face. But it has a strong impact on family. And for transgenerational poverty, well, you have families living in terrible conditions, and then their children pay for this because they don't have, they are having difficulties at school. And, well, I remember how difficult it was when my kids were young. I couldn't follow everything they were doing. Then the school collaborated, but it's really hard to hold this upwards. I mean, it's difficult. And the parents, it's very difficult. And there's a lot of energy that you put into it. And, well, do I feel like socializing? Perhaps, but I can't. I can't. Ms. Debay, I think it's important to make sure that there's more weeks, and I'm interested to know that my colleagues, the Conservatives, are agreeing to this. But I would like to know at what other level, because you're talking about mental health, beyond the fact that we need to have longer benefits, how can the government better support these families? Oh, beyond these benefits, well, it's very specific. You have some programs that could be put in place. To be honest, to go into the detail of all this, I have no clue. Perhaps not to tax or take into account that we have people to take care of. You have $8,000. It's fine if you're single, but if you have 3 kids, it's not the same. Perhaps to look at things like that. For me, it was employment insurance. That's what I fought for. And the fact that there is too many people diving into poverty and it's transmitted from generation to generation. So this was my fight. I didn't go into details, other aspects. Or I think that's the basic. You have to start with that. You have to give a solid basis so that it helps. And 26 weeks is not really answering. Thank you, Ms. Debay, and I commend you for the fight you're actually doing since so many years. And Mr. You presented a memoir for the right to equity. So you talked about many things, but I would like to give you the floor.
Recevoir des prestations
Receiving EI benefits is the best place for people who are sick because it's relatively easy. We spoke earlier of the fact of having a medical note that leads to EI benefits, sick benefits. Also, we want to make sure that each and every person is able to receive benefits, that they be, whether they're regular benefits or special benefits, and that one does not make it so that the other, so that they're not eligible to the other. So if we don't do things properly, we might find ourselves with a perverse effect where some people won't be able to receive their regular EI or other sick EI benefits, even if we amend the Act, as C215 is suggesting. So the work has to be done correctly. Thank you. Madame Chabot, 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Dubé. And once again, I wish you courage and solidarity in this fight and the fight that you've been participating in. We're not here talking about generalities of EI. We are talking about something very concrete here. These are special sickness benefits, and this is part of the EI insurance program. And after 600 hours to qualify oneself, only 15 weeks of benefits are allowed. And this is a fight that's been ongoing for a long time. And I spoke about this in the beginning. And I know that you, Mrs. Dubé, you have been working on this for a long time. And so we can wonder, once again today, what more does it take to convince people? On a rational level, because on an emotional level, I believe that everyone will recognize that it's totally illogical. When you meet or know people that are suffering through serious illnesses, if with science and research, why is 26 weeks not enough? Mrs. Dubé. Right. Thank you. Well, on the emotional side, everyone agrees. On the rational side, well, let's go with numbers. You can look at the numbers and how much it costs to keep this current act in place rather than asking how much it will cost to amend it. We've demonstrated this. How much does intergenerational poverty cost? I spoke to this in my brief. We have to look at this and think about it. Giving 20 extra weeks to someone and after, if not, well, they'll be on social assistance. They won't feel like a full citizens. All these are costs too, and we are the only G7 country other than the U.S. that gives less than 1 year. Everywhere else, if we look at, I have to find it here, in Europe, most countries give 1 year, 2 years, a year and a half. It's very well documented. Countries offering better coverage are in a win-win situation. Spain gives a year plus 6 months. Ireland, Hungary, 1 year. Even South Africa, 52 weeks. Here, us in Canada, what are we doing? We have to look at what other countries are doing. And does it work? Yes, it works. And they have created systems where sometimes the benefits go up. Maybe you start at 51%. If you're sicker, some countries give up to 90% because the illness continues on. Those who are the most in need get more so that they're not out on the street. We have to look at these things. We have to look at what happens elsewhere and calculate, not just calculating the cost of the measure, but the cost of how much this measure is costing to keep it. It's huge. And then if we look at this labor shortage situation, it's amazing what we're doing here. So we need to allow people to heal and then to go back to work. They want to go back to work. Are we going to send them on the street and make them unable to work and to think that it's not worth it? We have to wonder about this and look at what other countries are doing and to see that we will be winning economically and humanly speaking as well. People will recover, will go back to work, will be able to do that. They will actively participate in society. They'll have better mental health instead of trying to wonder what to do with their days, to be depressed and lose their jobs. We really have to have this adapted to the reality, and we have to look at this. We have to look at all the angles. It's super important, and these are very technical issues. Other than the feasibility, there are many arguments that have to be taken into account. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're talking about workers here, and so the objective of the regime that should be a social safety net, now it's an insurance, a very meager insurance program. We have to allow people the ability to go back to work eventually. When I was talking about rationale, something that's rational and logical, you explained it well. I have a minute left, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Bazin, for your testimony. I think that it's very relevant, and you spoke about women and the reference period and maternity leave and qualification and access. And it's true that the same thing would apply to EI benefits. In both cases, it's part of the chapter of special benefits with the same issues around this. So do you believe that a reform should correct this on a priority basis? Yes, it is a priority, and even for EI sickness benefits, a professional burnout is not something that is solved in 15 weeks. It's really rarely solved in 26 weeks. So it's really important, yes, in case of cancer, but also in a case that's directly linked to work. A burnout, a catastrophic burnout, workers that really have to go back to work when they're not recovered. This creates an extra cycle of professional sickness, oftentimes unrecognized in Quebec by the CNSST. So it's very important to look at this issue for all types of illnesses, whether it be cancer or issues such as a burnout. This is not resolved in 25 weeks, and very rarely in 26. Thank you.
Sorry, Madame Zerillo for 6.
Madame Zarillo, 6 minutes.
Certainly, the NDP support this increase to weeks, and also the Bloc. I think it's been spoken today that's been brought a number of times in the past from the Bloc and also from the NDP, but there's been some lack of political will on the other parties. So I'm hoping that today, through this bill, that there's some consensus and we can get this increase in weeks happening. I'm going to ask my first question to Mr. Bazin, just around the stacking of benefits, and just if this, if C215, the one we're discussing today, gives us a window to very quickly and efficiently increase those weeks of benefit, is there going to be any problems around the stacking of benefits, and will there be any risks or losses to other benefits that we should know about?
Well, yes, that's the thing. We really have to, in C215, to make sure that everyone can receive EI sickness benefits at the maximum level, the 52 weeks. So we have to deal with 12.6. It's fine to deal with 12.3c. That speaks to the maximum level of benefits for sickness benefits. But if we don't fix 12.6, Section 12.6, we'll have cases such as this. In Montreal, you have the right to 36 weeks regular benefits. That's the maximum. 36 weeks regular benefits. Let's say that I lose my job. I have 36 regular weeks, and then I become sick. Well, I won't be able to receive more than 14 weeks and sickness benefits, I'll reach the maximum because 12.6 is very clear on this. As soon as you have 1 week of regular EI benefits, the maximum that you can receive is 50 weeks. It's impossible to receive more than 50 weeks. All kinds of benefits as soon as you receive regular benefits. So the inverse can be true as well. If I'm sick and I have 52 weeks, let's say I go back to work, and I don't know where I'm working. There's a fire. I don't know. It's an example. Okay, so there's a fire, and then I'm supposed to receive regular EI benefits to replace my revenue, my normal revenue for someone who loses their job. But because I received sickness benefits, I can't receive regular benefits because of 12.6. And so on one hand, or on the other hand, if we don't fix 12.6, there will be unemployed people who will find themselves without any revenue replacement, whether it be for sickness benefits or for regular benefits. So it's something we really have to think about. I invite the HUMA committee to review or amend C215 to make sure that our section 12.6 is not going against the amendment to 12.3c.
I just ask, has the Liberal government seen these? Have you had any feedback in relation to the amendment that you could share?
Well, this is something that we put forth with the Liberal government. Our main issue was around mothers who lost their job after maternity leave and parental leave. And as I was saying earlier, even the Social Safety Tribunal repeated that 12.6 of the EI Act contravened equality in Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights. And so this is something that the government is aware of because we have put this forth. The general stacking, whether, regardless of the type of special, so we hit against 12.6. It's impossible to receive more than 50 weeks of benefits, all benefits, if you need different types of benefits. This can happen in the lives of workers, to lose a job, to be sick, to have something happen, to have a child, and we don't want everything to happen during the same period of time, but it's possible. So if we are modifying the amount of weeks of sickness benefits, that people are not hitting up against 12.6 of the EI Act afterwards.
Thank you, Madame Zerillo. That concludes our direction from the committee. I've got a few minutes left of our 2-hour slot, and I need some direction from the committee on one item, so that will not allow us to continue with questioning, if that's okay with the committee members. Is that? Okay. Okay. With that, then, I want to thank the committee the witnesses for appearing in the last hour. Obviously, this is a very emotional issue, and thank you for taking your time and coming in and sharing some very personal experience with the committee this afternoon. Madam Clerk, so that concludes the witnesses, and Mr. Saint-Fasson wanted to stay, and I agreed that he could stay and hear the testimony. So with this, we will conclude this round of questioning, and Madame Zerillo, did you put your hand up?
We're
okay.
done. the testimony is all finished?
Yes.
I did have an item for the committee.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I did have an item for the committee. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring forward a motion, a notice of motion that I had circulated a couple of...
Zarrillo, I would like to excuse the witnesses at this time, and again, thank them for attending. Monsieur Bazin et Madame Dubé, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Okay, there you go. Madame Zarrillo, you had the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had a motion to put onto the floor today around the Federal Housing Advocate report. So I'll just go ahead and read the motion. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study to examine the research reports on the financialization of housing released by the Office of the Federal Housing Advocate on September 8, 2022. That the committee examine corporate ownership of single-family homes, rent gouging, and other predatory tactics such as rent evictions. That the committee hold no less than 3 meetings with witnesses for this study. That witnesses include researchers from all of the 6 reports released through the Office of the Federal Housing Advocate, and a dedicated panel to hear testimony from the Federal Housing Advocate. That the committee report in its findings to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response thereto.
Thank you, Madame Zarrillo. For the benefit of the new committee members that were not with us, this was a motion that was under discussion the last time the committee met, and there was a motion to adjourn a debate at that time because of a translation issue on an amendment that was before. So we have Madame Zarrillo's motion. It is in order, as it has the time frame for notice to proceed to the committee. Mr. Collins?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And you recall last meeting was, well, we had a motion to amend Member Zarrillo's motion at that point in time, and we needed the translation for it. So I think that has been distributed to the committee clerk and has been distributed to committee members. And so if I could read the amendment that deals with real estate investment trusts, I think was the theme, along the same lines as Bonita's motion as it relates to the financialization of the housing market. So if I could read the amendment at this point in time. And it would read in the second paragraph that the committee examine the issue of financialization in the housing market, including corporate ownership of single-family homes, rent gouging and rent evictions, and the impact of the real estate investment trusts on the rental housing market, including but not limited to increased rental rates and the loss of affordable housing units, as well as the tax treatment of real estate investment trusts. And then if you move on to where it states that witnesses include, and I've added the words, but not limited to researchers from the reports released through the Office of Federal Housing Advocacy.
I would like to say that for translation, well, the interpreters do not have the text, and Mr. Collins was reading really fast. So perhaps can we support interpreters and myself by giving the text to them or by reading slowly?
From the top.
I'll read it from the top.
Mr. Collins.
That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study to examine the research reports on the financialization of housing released by the Office of the Federal Housing Advocate on September the 8th, 2022. That the committee examine the issue of financialization in the housing market, including corporate ownership of single-family homes, rent gouging and rent evictions, and the impact of the real estate investment trusts on the rental housing market, including but not limited to increased rental rates and the loss of affordable housing units, as well as the tax treatment of real estate investment trusts. That the committee hold no less than 3 meetings with witnesses for the study. That the witnesses include but not be limited to researchers from the reports released through the Office of the Federal Housing Advocate, and a dedicated panel to hear testimony from the Federal Housing Advocate. That the committee report its findings to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response thereto.
Debate on the amendment. Mr. Atchison.
Aitchison. Close enough for our purposes, I'm sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I gotta say, I'm actually completely opposed to all of this because, in fact, things like rent evictions and all these things that we're talking about, we're trying to, demonize private sector landlords. This is absolutely 1,000% provincial jurisdiction. The one thing that we do have some ability to affect when it comes to housing at this level of government is supply and assisting with getting some supply down. So if we're going to do any study here at this committee, that study should be on why billions of dollars have been promised to the CMHC, and it's like a straitjacket because community groups and various different investors that are trying to get units built, I can give you several examples all across Canada, they can't get any funding out of the CMHC. To me, that's the real problem. That's the real challenge we've got, and it's an area that we actually have some responsibility over. We actually can affect some change on. This other stuff is really provincial jurisdiction about, the Landlord-Tenant Act and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't really affect anything that we do here. We're not going to start telling the provinces how to handle their landlord-tenant boards now. We should focus on why, in fact, after promising billions, literally billions for the last 7 years, the situation is worse than it was 7 years ago. So I think that this is it's a partisan effort to try to demonize certain groups of people when we really should be focusing on what we can actually do around here, which we haven't done.
Madame Martinez-Ferrado.
Merci, Monsieur. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to start a debate on this issue, but I would like to say that everything that the federal government can study to improve the work we do on lodging and the help we want to give to Canadians, I think is a good study. And I would like for us to vote on the amendments.
Amendment. Call the vote.
Mr. Long.
Support.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada.
Oui.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau.
In favor.
Mr. Van Bynen.
In favor.
Ms. Kuzi.
It's studies like this that sank the Vancouver City Councils and that will sink this government. Opposed.
Ms. Ferrari.
Opposed.
Ms. Falk.
No.
Mr. Aitchison.
No.
Madame Chabot.
Pour.
Ms. Cirillo.
I spent 8 years listening to one level of government say it was not someone else's responsibility, so I'm in favor. Thank you.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
So the amendment is carried. Seeing no further debate, I'll call for a vote on the main motion as amended. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Long.
Support.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada.
Oui.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau. In favor. Mr. Van Bynen.
Yes.
Ms. Kuzi.
Opposed.
Ms. Ferrari.
Opposed.
Ms. Falk.
No.
Mr. Aitchison.
No.
Madame Chabot.
Pour.
Ms. Cirillo.
In favor.
Ms. Cirillo.
In favor.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
Motion carried. That moves the motion into before the committee. One final item. I'm asking members. I need direction on a deadline for submission of proposed amendments and date for the clause-by-clause consideration of the bill currently being under consideration by the House, by the committee, C215. Can I get some direction from the committee on amendments? We're under tight timeline. And the date for clause by clause. There may not be any. Okay. Well, Madame Zarrillo?
I have a question, Chair. I mean, we do have a number of studies that need to go line by line, as well as we're all anticipating a study here around C22. So is there an opportunity for there to be additional meetings than what's currently scheduled for HUMA?
Within the committee's domain. Madame Shabat?
Mr. Speaker, I think given the time that we work really quickly on the bill to something, I don't think we should delay any of this. And then we can continue with our agenda.
Consensus that as soon as possible, so I'll consult with the clerk and I will send out a notice to committee members. With that, thank you, committee members. I move that we adjourn. Committee adjourned.